You know you're supposed to show in your writing, but how do you do that? We've already talked about when it's better to actually tell instead of show, but what about when you actually do need to show? In my previous video, we covered why showing everything can bloat your manuscript and kill your pacing, but when you do need to show something, you need to do it well, and that's where a lot of writers, particularly new writers, struggle. They know they're supposed to show emotions instead of telling them. They know they're supposed to use sensory details and body language. But when they actually try to implement it, their showing feels flat, maybe cliche. Like they're checking boxes off a marketing list rather than trying to create an immersive experience for the readers. So in this video, we're gonna break down exactly how to show in your writing in a way that feels natural, specific, and powerful. We'll look at the 4 biggest mistakes writers tend to make when trying to show and concrete techniques you can use to fix them. I'll also show you, pun intended, examples of weak versus strong showing so you can see exactly what works and what doesn't. If you're new here, my name is Brianna and I post videos every Sunday that help you become a better writer. I also make easy to use writing workbooks that help you build and outline your novel from start to finish, so if you're interested, check them out in my Etsy shop, Planner Palette Co., linked in the description below, and don't forget to like the video and subscribe to my channel. Before we start with the mistakes, let's quickly define what showing actually is. Showing means you're giving readers sensory details, action, and dialogue that allow them to experience the story firsthand and draw their own conclusions. So instead of telling readers that Sarah was terrified, you show them her trembling hands, her shallow breathing, and the way she can't stop glancing over her shoulder. The goal of showing is to create an experience in the reader's mind. You want them to feel what the character feels, see what the character sees, and live in that moment alongside them. But showing isn't just about dumping in more details. It's about choosing the right details, and that's where most writers tend to make these 4 mistakes. So the first mistake is using cliche body language, and this is hands down the most common mistake I see writers make when they're trying to show emotion. They rely on the same tired body language cues that have been used in every book, every movie, every story ever written. You know what I'm talking about. The hearts that keep racing, the palms that are always sweaty, fists are constantly clenching, eyebrows raising, breaths hitching, butterflies in the stomach. Now, these aren't necessarily wrong, but they're so overused that they've lost their impact and have become cliche. When a reader sees her heart pounded, their brain glosses right over it because they've seen the exact phrase 1,000 times before. It doesn't create a vivid image anymore, it's just white noise. So I'm going to give you a weak and a stronger example of this, and I'll caveat that these are not perfect examples. They're just meant to give you a better understanding of what I mean. Nolan stood at the edge of the cliff, heart racing, as he looked down at the churning water below. He clenched his sweaty fists, took a deep breath, and jumped. Now, this isn't bad writing. We get the basic idea that Nolan is nervous, but it doesn't feel specific to him or to this moment. It could be copy-pasted into any scene where anyone is scared. We're not getting that emotional connection between his emotional state and why he's jumping. So a stronger example might look like Nolan stood at the edge of the cliff, the wind whipping his hair into his eyes as he watched the water below churn like tar. He straightened out his palms, noticing the crescent-shaped indents from his nails. His sister used to do that when she was nervous. He hated that he picked up the habit. Now we're getting somewhere. Instead of a generic, his heart raced, we have a specific nervous tic that's unique to Nolan. And we get a glimpse into his backstory, his sister, which layers on more emotional depth. Describing the water like churning tar is also much more visceral and gives you that visual of something thick, slow, and sludgy, which isn't normally attributed to water, so it adds an extra layer of depth to how Nolan is seeing it in this moment. So if you're finding a lot of cliche body language in your own manuscript, here are some ways that you can fix it. First, become aware of your go-to body language cliches. Do a search through your manuscript for words like heart, breath, fist, eyebrow, stomach, chest, race, clench, stutter, etc. If you find yourself using those same phrases repeatedly, highlight them in a specific color. Then go through and replace them with specific character-driven details. Think about what your character would do when they're nervous or angry or excited. Do they have a nervous habit, a physical tell? What objects are nearby that they might interact with? It's okay to leave some cliche body language in, especially if it's true to your character, but try to replace at least like 80% of it because most of the time they're just crutch phrases. Real people don't all express emotion the same way, so your character shouldn't either. Some people get loud when they're angry, others go eerily quiet. Some people fidget when they're nervous, other people freeze up. Make your character's reactions theirs, not just borrowed from every other book. The second mistake is over-explaining the showing, and this one's sneaky because it feels like you're doing the right thing, but you're actually undermining your own showing. You have a writer who shows something perfectly well through action and detail, but then they don't trust the reader to understand it. So they tack on an explanation after that tells the reader exactly what to think. So a weak example of this could be Elena slammed the door behind her and threw her keys across the room. They hit the wall with a crack. Fury raged through her veins. Okay, so the first two sentences are great showing. We can see Elena's anger through her actions. But then that last sentence basically just says she was furious in flowery prose. That's still telling. And it's redundant because we already knew she was furious from the door slamming and the key throwing. When you show and tell within the same paragraph about the same thing, you're essentially saying this part is important and I don't trust you to figure this out, so let me spell it out for you. And that's insulting to your audience. Readers are smart. They can connect the dots, and it's more fun to connect it themselves. So a stronger example might say, Elena slammed the door behind her and threw her keys across the room. They hit the wall with a crack, leaving a dent in the plaster. That's it. We cut out the redundant add-on that she was furious because it's already obvious. The added detail about the dent in the plaster helps make the anger feel more intense because it shows her force behind the throw. So if you're realizing that you've been doing this, after you write a scene, go back through and look for places where you're both showing and telling the same thing. Because there's a difference if you're doing it purposefully, like if it's necessary for world building reasons. But if you've shown a character's emotion through their actions, facial expressions, or dialogue, you probably don't need to also name that emotion. Mistake number 3 is showing the wrong things. Not all details are created equal. Some details immerse the reader in the story, other details just bog down the narrative with information that nobody cares about. The mistake writers make here is thinking that showing means describing everything in excruciating detail. But showing is about relevance, not quantity. You want to show details that either reveal character, build atmosphere, advance the plot, or create emotional resonance. If a detail doesn't do at least one of those things, it's probably clutter. So a weak example of this might be Nadia walked into the coffee shop. The walls were painted a light beige with white trim. There were 10 small round tables scattered throughout the space, each with 2 chairs. A chalkboard menu hung behind the counter listing various drinks in colored chalk. The barista wore a green apron and had her hair pulled back in a ponytail. Nadia ordered a latte and sat down at a table near the window. This is showing, sure, but it's showing things that don't matter. We don't need to know the exact color of the walls or how many tables there are or what the barista's hairstyle is, unless one of those details is actually important to the story or reveals something about Nadia's character. So a stronger example of this might be Nadia pushed through the creaky coffee shop door and was immediately hit with the smell of coffee and that acrid undertone as if someone had left the pot on too long. She scanned the room, spotting a perfect empty seat, a corner table with her back to the wall. There, she'd see both exits. Now we're showing details that actually tell us something. The creaking and burnt coffee creates atmosphere and maybe hints that this isn't a fancy place, and Nadia's choice of seating reveals character, that she's cautious, maybe paranoid, someone who needs to see exits. These details do work beyond just describing the setting. So before you include a descriptive detail, ask yourself, what is this detail doing for my story? If the answer is to just describe the scene for the sake of establishing the setting, then consider rephrasing it with details that reveal character or build an atmosphere that readers can feel, not just imagine. And I'll go into this more in the next mistake. Also, filter your descriptions through your point of view character's perspective. What would they notice in this moment? A chief might notice the smell of food. A detective might notice the security cameras. A nervous person might notice the exits. Let your character's personality and emotional state guide which details you show. Now, the fourth and last mistake is forgetting the other senses, and this is a big one. Most writers over-rely on visual descriptions and completely forget that they have 4 other senses that they can play with. We describe what things look like constantly, but how often do we describe what things sound like, smell like, taste like, or feel like? The most immersive showing shows us multiple senses, not just sight. And sometimes the non-visual senses create even stronger emotional responses. So for a weak example, the abandoned house looked creepy, to say the least. The windows were broken, vines covered the walls, and the darkness inside seemed like it would swallow up anyone who stepped through the door. Again, this is not technically wrong, but it's all visual and it's all pretty surface level. Looked creepy is actually telling, not showing, and the rest is just basic visual description. So a stronger example might say, the abandoned house exhaled a pungent odor of rot and mildew as Kara pushed open the door. Inside, something scuttled across the floor like nails clicking against wood. The air hung thick and damp. It coated her skin like film and made each breath heavy. She touched the wall and nearly gagged as the wallpaper came away in her hand, soft and pulpy. This is better. We have smell, rotten mildew, sound, scuttling, nails clicking, and touch. damp air, and pulpy wallpaper. These non-visual details make the scene feel so much more real and visceral. The wallpaper being soft and pulpy is also especially effective because it's disgusting and unexpected. So what you should do is go through your manuscript and highlight every sense you're using. This will be tedious, but you'll probably find that at least 70% of your descriptions are visual. If this is the case, then go back to your most important scenes, the ones where you really want to immerse your readers in, and add in non-visual sensory details. Think about, what do your characters hear? Is there an unsettling silence, or is it noisy? Are there specific, identifiable sounds? Or what does this place, person, or moment smell like? This one's powerful because smell is also closely tied to memory and emotion. Or what about temperature, texture, or physical sensations? Is it hot or cold, rough or smooth? Does something hurt? And then there's something they can taste. This comes up less often, but when it does, it's very evocative, like the taste of blood, dust, or salty air. Now, you don't need to use all 5 senses for every scene, but aim for at least 2 or 3 in your most important moments. For your other more minor scenes, you can just include 1 or 2 senses just to help ground the reader and then move on. So those are the 4 major mistakes I've seen in writing that struggles with showing. Now, I do have a bonus tip that you may or may not have already heard before, but it's super important when you want to show something and you want to do it well. And that's to replace weak verbs with strong and specific ones. Weak verbs are generic, and oftentimes this leads to the writer tacking on an adverb to clarify its meaning when they could have used a strong verb that's specific and vivid on its own. A sentence with weak verbs might say, she walked quickly to the door, whereas a strong verb might say, she rushed to the door, she bolted to the door, or she hurried to the door. Do you see the difference? Walked quickly requires 2 verbs, the verb and the adverb, to describe what rushed conveys in one. Rushed is more specific and creates a clearer image in the reader's mind, while walked quickly takes up more page space and slows down the pacing. For another example, a weak verb would say, he said loudly, get out. A strong verb would say, he shouted, get out, or he bellowed, get out, or he roared, get out. Again, said loudly is weaker than a single specific verb like shouted, and each of those verbs, shouted, bellowed, roared, has a slightly different connotation which gives you more control over the tone. And this applies beyond dialogue tags too. Look for places where you're using generic verbs like put, take, move, look, go, make, get. See if you can replace them with something more specific and vivid to better visualize the moment. A weak verb might say, he put the gun on the table, whereas a strong example might say, he slammed the gun on the table, he placed the gun on the table, or he tossed the gun on the table. Each of those conveys a different emotional tone. Slammed suggests anger or aggression. Placed suggests care or control. And tossed suggests indifference. Use that specificity to your advantage. Alright, so let's recap the 4 mistakes and how to fix them. Number 1, using cliché body language. Replace those generic reactions with specific ones that make sense to your character. Mistake number 2 is over-explaining your showing. Trust your readers to understand what you mean. Don't show and tell the same thing in the same line. Mistake number 3, showing the wrong things. The details you highlight should reveal character, build atmosphere, advance the plot, or create emotion. Mistake number 4, forgetting the other senses. Use sound, smell, touch, and taste alongside your visual descriptions. And lastly, always opt for strong, specific verbs when possible. Replace those weak verb-adverb combinations with a single, powerful, strong verb. When you combine all of these techniques, your showing becomes immersive, specific, and powerful. You stop cramming in more description and start choosing the right details to present. There are absolutely times when telling is better than showing, which we covered in my previous video, so you can go watch that next. But when you do need to show something like an emotional moment, a crucial scene, or a character revelation, make sure you're showing it well. Because good showing doesn't call attention to itself. It doesn't feel like the writer is trying too hard. It just works because the reader is so immersed in the experience that they forget they're reading words on a page. That's always the goal. Thank you for watching. If you like this video, you might want to watch this one next. And drop a comment letting me know what's one body cliche you tend to overuse in your writing. Mine is characters looking away. On to the next chapter.